Beauty calls and gives no warning. Shadows rise and wander on the day. In the twilight, in the quiet evening.
I've been a psychologist for almost 4 decades. For the past dozen years, I've also been a serious writer. My nonfiction book about apologies is coming out in June 2020. There are cards in the back if you want to pre-order. This is an excerpt. Roland, a 43-year-old attorney, came to see me on the recommendation of his girlfriend, Kathy. He told me with humor and insight about his current life and about his childhood, shared with his just younger brother. Both Roland's parents had died in the previous 5 years, and his dark periods of grief were why Kathy thought he should talk to someone. Sometimes, as he spoke about his parents, particularly his mother, his eyes filled, but he usually moved quickly to another subject. As a litigator, Roland was used to controlling the narrative. When I asked about emotional supports, he answered that Kathy, the sound keeps coming in and out, does it? He answered that Kathy was the only person he was close to anymore. The anymore rang hollow and sad, as if he had lost someone. Did you have someone before? I asked. No. Well, I don't know. He became uncharacteristically quiet. Was it your mother, I asked, the person you used to be close to? His eyes narrowed and he rearranged himself in his chair, rolling his neck. Silence, except for his breath, which came in audible short bursts. I wondered if I'd angered him by asking, but his eyes looked more bereft than angry. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with feeling. My expletive brother and I used to be close. 5 years earlier, after their father died, his brother and he had argued about the parents' property. On one occasion, Roland had physically pushed his brother in frustration. In the melee that followed, his brother had broken Roland's nose and stormed out of the house, leaving him bloody and furious. They hadn't spoken since. His lifelong ally had disappeared from his life, just like that. He didn't even speak to me at our mother's funeral. Roland's jaw tightened. That ruined our relationship for good. Over the next few sessions, as we talked about their conflict, I carefully introduced the possibility that Roland had inadvertently contributed to the standoff himself. For example, he hadn't approached his brother at the funeral either. No, he betrayed me. Despite the loss of this important relationship, Roland couldn't consider approaching his brother to try to repair their rift. He concluded, he owes me an apology. I wish he would say he was sorry. You could see his isolation as self-imposed, a result of innate stubbornness, but I see it as a product of our culture, too. In a recent Psychology Today report, a journalist interviewed estranged siblings. Despite years of unhappy distance, they all said they would be willing to reconcile if their brother or sister approached them to say, I'm sorry, but not one intended to initiate an apology. Why do we, like Roland, like all these estranged siblings, stay stuck in an unhappy situation rather than fix it? Even when we sense there's more than one side to the story, we still wait for the other person to make it right. Most of us have a Roland in our lives, or are Roland ourselves. If you have trouble taking responsibility for mistakes or hurts, you're not alone. Because of the way our brains work, we're hardwired not to see our own errors. Also, because of the way our culture values independence, repairing relationships barely makes a blip on our radar. No one teaches us how to mend breaches with other people, and we rarely witness effective apologies. It follows that most of us don't even know what a good apology looks like. Given all these limitations, it's kind of amazing that anyone ever apologizes. But it turns out that almost everyone can learn how to.
I had this little vision last night of, I don't know if any of you have seen the commercial, the sort of cartoon characters, and they say, "Hi," and I'd love for you to all say that back to me. Hi. Good morning. I love it to have all that. This is so great. And at the end, I will say, bye. Okay. Well, I have not been inspired to write a new poem for a while now, so I went through the poems I have written, and I decided on this one, maybe because JFK just had an anniversary of his passing, and he was a part of this. I'm not sure if that's why, but the name of it is A Young Girl's Trip to Ireland. Che mille falta, 100,000 welcomes. Flags were flying and Irish eyes were smiling. A trip abroad with Grandpa and my brother John. For a young girl of 18, a new world was about to dawn. A visit with the relatives and a tour of the Emerald Isle. 'Twas beautiful with its shades of green, and the Irish lads I would soon beguile. Riding horseback through the Gap of Dunlow, indeed it was a sight to see, but another special day was soon about to be. We gathered at the terminal, and after waiting for a while, we welcomed President JFK, and of course, it was in style. The time was June of '63, and a trip I'll always treasure. Sharing it with you today has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. Bye.
So this is my newest song. I wrote it for Songwriters in the Round I was in last week. And it's one of those things where the previous month's audience chooses a theme, and then everybody has to write a song based on that theme for one round. And this time around, the chosen theme was "Claire is leaving!" exclamation point. Claire's leaving in the morning. Catch a plane to Paris, France. Hang out in the corner cafes. Walk the Seine, learn to dance. Maybe she will write a novel. Read the works of Baudelaire. Come the morning sunrise. Say goodbye to Claire. Claire is leaving in the morning. Sail a ship across the sea. Ride a camel down the Nile. Scale the heights of ecstasy. Set out on that endless highway, journeying to God knows where. Come the morning sunrise. Say goodbye to Claire. And the stars will be diamonds in the desert sky above. The moon a lantern on the path to true love. Walk by her apartment, call her on the phone. If you're looking for her, Claire will be gone. any day now. Hear the tolling of the bell. Leave the dishes in the sink. Tell the boss, go to hell. Instead of waiting for the bus, fly to meet the Southern Cross before her deepest dreams are lost. Say goodbye to Claire. Say goodbye to Claire. Say goodbye to Claire.
This is a scene from an unfinished, untitled detective novel I'm writing. Dick Leiter, a former FBI agent, now a Boston PI, was hired by Lauren Vandergelt, the daughter of an ex-Army MP buddy, to find her missing billionaire husband. It was Wednesday. He was still no closer to finding Stefan Vandergelt than he was on Monday when he was hired. He'd gathered several pieces of the puzzle: missing billionaire, billionaire's wife, high-tech espionage, police, FBI, high-priced detectives following Lauren, and mysterious computer hacking. Most did not fit together. He needed a drink to think. Kelly's was the place. "Hey, Tommy." "Hey, Dick, you look like shit." "Thanks. I love you too. I need a shot plus my regular. The way you look, it's on me tonight." I've been coming to Kelly's for years. I used to come here when I was a teenager, when Tommy's dad ran the place. He always had some work a kid could do around here. When I got older, my first legal beer was right here. Kelly's drew a local crowd, mostly blue-collar, but anyone from the neighborhood was welcome. I was sitting at the end of the bar where it makes a right angle to the wall. It gave me plenty of room, and I could see the front door. An old habit. Whenever Tommy saw me come in, he'd make room and make sure the stool was freed up. I'd been there about 10 minutes when I saw these two jamokes walk into the bar. I thought I was watching an old Bogart movie, a pair in dark suits. These guys must have gotten their dress lessons from the Blues Brothers detectives who had tailed Lauren. Definitely they needed guidance. However, they looked like New England Patriot linemen, so I wasn't about to be the one to give them fashion tips. Let them buy a GQ. I went back to drinking and sipping my Guinness. A few seconds later, a shadow crossed over me. The lighting was poor in Kelly's, and now had just gotten worse. I took another sip. I didn't need the light to find my mouth, and a cold beer was only good when it was cold. "You Dick Leiter?" a deep voice asked. Sounded like he had marbles in his mouth. Better his than mine. I ignored the question. I knew who I was, so I didn't have to educate anyone else. This time, the voice spat the question. "You Dick Leiter?" I know to take it slow. No sense antagonizing anyone was my philosophy. Well, it is in principle, except when I'm having a cold beer. Then I'm less than hospitable. Something I sometimes regret, and I had a feeling as soon as I turned around to face these two guys and answered, I was going to regret my response. But my mouth is faster than the brain sometimes, and this was one of those times. "Who's asking?" I said with an attitude. The shorter of the two leaned forward, as if he was trying to hear better, which made me lean forward also. Just as I moved slightly, the other goon, who had moved to my left, caught my head with his fist. His fist had to have been the size of a gorilla's. It left marks and indents the size of a grapefruit. My head did a good job of letting the fist know who the boss was, and immediately traveled about 2 feet to the right, bringing the rest of my body with it. Then my whole body went down until it came face to face with the floor. My mouth spread across the floor like a dish rag, wet and messy. I was down for the count. When I opened my eyes, I was sitting in the back seat of a large sedan traveling under the Southeast Expressway, heading toward the Boston Gardens. My head ached, and by the buzzing sound, I thought a beehive had been pushed inside it. I didn't move so these guys thought I was still out and I could consider my options. The door on my left was unlocked, but we were moving about 40 miles an hour, and if the fall didn't kill me, the oncoming traffic probably would. So I decided to wait and see where we were going, and hope I had the strength to do something when we got there. Thanks.
With the Christmas season approaching, a holiday of peace, which persists despite unflagging attempts to commercialize it. We all feel and experience a feeling of peace during this season in some way at some point. Today I'm going to read a peacenik poem. Happens to contain a mention of one of the songs that Jay sang in his feature. And my poem is called Family Tradition. Call me Huxley, named after my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Huxley McPrine, who was the first in a long line of Dodgers. Indeed, we've dodged every war this country ever waged, going as far back as regime change from king to president, followed by the one to preserve the Union, but there can be no empire without union. And then the grand one, to end all wars forever, producing only grand dirges like the green fields of France, and the band played Waltzing Matilda. Then the big one, to prevent nations overseas from becoming stronger than ourselves. Also those sundry tours de force that may receive less acclamation in the history books, but nevertheless, whose dead are as dead as the rest. So here I am, the great-great-great-great-grandson, doing his part to carry on the family tradition of dying only from natural causes. Thank you.
It's nice to get someone ask you to do something, so this comes out as a request. After putting a full day of work on the farm, he'd sit on the porch and sing and play the banjo. And that was me, that little boy, sitting at his feet, hanging on every word and every note. He'd have to tell me when it was time to go, usually by putting it in his song. It's time to take my banjo and put it on the shelf. If you want to hear any more, you'll have to play it yourself. He always had a great big smile on his face, a tooth in every other space, a grand hello, an old banjo in the corner on a stand. It didn't take that much to coax a song from the old goat. I loved his music, and I loved that man. He'd sing, "You ought to see my Cindy, she lives away down south. She's so sweet the honeybees swarm around her mouth." Last time I saw him, he leaned his hoe up against the barn, reached out to take my arm, and in his blistered grasp I could read the past in every callus on his hands. He lived in a world of earth and rust, and his clothes filled with dust, and that dust spilled out in the music of the man. Cindy got religion, happened once before, But when she hears my banjo, she's the first one on the floor. That banjo, it had a broken string. I think it had been that way since spring. Still, it had a tone like a polished stone, smoothed by 1,000 hands. It had a high and lonesome sound, firmly rooted in the ground, and woven through the music of that man. When I die, as surely everybody will, the ringing of my banjo will echo through these hills. That's old-fashioned, they all say. How come you play that way? Don't you know they turn that page on the Nashville stage? They don't understand. This is more than history, and I feel it's up to me to carry on the music of that man. It's time to take his banjo and pull it from the shelf. He can't play it anymore, so I'll have to play it myself.
This is called Enjoy.
Hello, Hopkinton. Hello. Cheryl, could you come forward, please? I have a presentation to make.
Okay, you know I don't do these, but I'll make an exception. Yes.
Cheryl, on behalf of everyone here, and also anyone who's ever performed at your open mic entitled Wake Up and Smell the Poetry, I would like to offer you the following poem from all of us in appreciation for everything you've done to promote Wake Up and Smell the Poetry. So everybody, except you, Cheryl, repeat after me. Our thoughts go out like messengers, swiftly on their way, bearing precious gifts to you, Cheryl Perrault, each moment of the day. Ceaselessly we send them forth, untiringly they bring the love that pours forth from our hearts in a never-ending spring. With trumpets to precede them, in songs of joy and gladness, they enter in and bring the word. 'Twill be an end to sadness. So receive these thoughts with gladness. May they fill your days with pleasure. For the joy you've given us, Cheryl Peralt, with your venue, Wake Up and Smell the Poetry, exceeds all boundless measure. Now, could everybody please stand up? I think we ought to give Cheryl Peralt a standing ovation.
The dreams we could not win. Under the flaming leaves, freezes the sky, it is the season grieves. Not you, not I. Oh, we have awakened sweet and had our birth, and that's the end of earth. And we have toiled and smiled and kept the light, and that's the end of night.
Did you know there are other ways to reduce your pain besides taking medications? For example, mindfulness. I'm Dr. Mike Guidi, a family medicine doctor based in Essex County. I use mindfulness techniques with my own patients during office visits, and I'm here to tell you how you can prevent addiction. It is a way to train your brain to manage pain. Reducing your pain through mindfulness could mean you need less medication or a safer type of medication. It can also help you reduce your stress and recover from past trauma. That means you become less likely to develop an addiction, whether opioids, alcohol, or any other substance. In brain research, we scan people's brains before they start practicing mindfulness, and after they've been practicing it daily for 8 weeks. We see actual changes in the way their brains are wired. We see those people drawing more on their judgment and reasoning skills, resulting in safer behaviors. Massachusetts has great resources about effective mindfulness techniques. To find out more, go to massmed.org.